But here in the United States, some 34,000 undocumented immigrants are being held in detention centers. Many have fled violence in Central America and have family here, but they still face deportation.
VOA's Jerome Socolovsky went to one of the country's largest detention centers where critics who want to see it closed are trying to help the detainees inside. Take a look.
Volunteer Beatriz Henao tries to lift the spirits of a Salvadoran detainee, telling him God never arrives late. NILSON FLORES was caught at the border in May and brought to the Stewart Detention Center in Georgia, a facility for male detainees. Most of them are sent back to their countries despite conditions there.
They should call this place the jail of broken dreams.
Henao is a volunteer with El Refugio, the refuge in Spanish. The faith-based group works out of a house down the road in Lumpkin, Georgia.
Now, you were able to accompany volunteers to this center. What stands out to you about the time you spent with them there?
I think the motivation of these people to actually have a contact with the detainees was quite striking. From a moral and a religious perspective, they feel that they have to show hospitality to these strangers in their country. One of them told me, I almost feel like I have to go and say, I do not agree with this. I'm not part of this. I want to help you and do, what little I can.
I want to talk more about this for-profit aspect of the system. People who support that, why do they say that that's a good way to set up the system?
Right, well, the federal government says that this is a more tax-effective way of detaining these people, and that it gives them the flexibility to move people around. However, the opponents say that what ends up happening is that there's a profit incentive.
When your profit margin is dependent upon apprehending and incarcerating, and when you make more profit by cutting costs in their care, I feel that that's reprehensible.
The estimates I saw is that it costs about $150 a day to keep these people in detention. There are lots of hotels that I stay at when I'm traveling that don't cost that much.
It's interesting, Jerome, we don't often get a look inside these detention centers. How was it that you were able to go in and do this story?
I was a bit surprised that I was allowed in. Also, the people at El Refugio told me that it was very unusual for a reporter with a camera to be allowed in. I think one of the interesting things is I was promised an interview with this detainee one-on-one. But when I was there, I was told, oh, for us to arrange that, we have to shut down the whole family visit system. I was accredited to go to this center, and the arrangements should have been made. There should have been a separate room for an interview with this guy. I'm not saying I'm not unhappy with the way it turned out, because in a way I think it's very realistic to see through the window. But doing TV, it makes it more difficult to tell his story, because you need shots of him doing other things to be able to talk about him. So
let's talk more about him and his story. What drove him to come to the U.S.?
I think it's a very interesting and moving and tragic story. His family left or fled El Salvador during the Civil War in I think around 1990, and he was a baby then, so he was left behind with relatives. Now there's another wave of violence in the country, and he's trying to leave and rejoin his parents, who he hasn't seen for 24 years. He's 25 years old. So he made the perilous journey through Mexico and was abandoned in the desert by a coyote, by a human smuggler. He said at one point, I was so exhausted, I just turned myself into the authorities.
What do you hope people who watch your piece take away from it?
I think the way this issue has been portrayed in this country has been pretty one-sided against these immigrants. So I didn't think it was such a bad thing to give the people who feel empathy with them more of a voice. I think this is a voice we don't hear so much in the debate in the U.S.
That debate should pick up again after the U.S. congressional elections in November. President Obama has said that is when he'll consider taking executive action on immigration.